Link versus Cloud. I'm tackling this one alone today, not because nobody offered, but because I have a massive headache and I'm not feeling well. I could not sustain a conversation for an hour. And I feel like that this is a matchup, and the only matchup in the first half of the season, that I particularly care about in any way. And, I mean, it's weird to say, because if you ask me what I think about Link vs. Cloud 2, I'm always going to say, but this is technically the matchup I care the most about. I did get hype for Poe vs Iron Fist, but that was all for Poe, not at all for Danny. This episode, I'm not particularly hyped for, but is one that I have some semblance of interest in. Legend of Zelda is a fine series. I've enjoyed the few games I played, those being Link's Awakening and Link to the Past. I also played Hyrule Warriors and fucking loved it, but I always played that with mates, and playing even playing a bad game with mates can be a fun time. But it's Cloud that makes me care about this matchup. This is Final Fantasy's return to Death Battle, the first return since Season 5. And while I don't talk about it much, Final Fantasy is one of my favourite video game series of all time, which of course means I'm not particularly happy about all of its reps being from Final Fantasy 7 only. Still, let's talk about Link vs. Cloud. Now what matters here is not where I think their stats should lie, and I need to make that very, very clear, because there's a lot of contention, especially with Link, over where characters should scale. I am not going to be talking about my opinion on where they should lie, but where I think Death Battle will peg them. Well, obviously they'll peg them in the butt. I mean, that's how pegging works. For Cloud, I imagine they'll be using Supernova scaling. Yes, back in Season 5, they came up with all that stuff for Supernova. They put a fan theory into the episode, but what they didn't do was say it was an illusion, like some people think they said. Sephiroth, in their eyes, took people into another world to get hit by it, while Sephiroth himself wasn't there. However, in the case of Cloud, this doesn't matter. In Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth will use Supernova in his safer Sephiroth form, and you will survive it. You cannot be killed by it. And some people might argue it's just gameplay mechanics, but there is a difference between Mario getting one-shot by a Goomba and an animation that directly shows your character surviving a supernova. Even in the Japanese version, I think you can still survive it. And it's not an illusion like some people claim. First off, if it's just an illusion, then what the hell is even hitting the party? And secondly, the Japanese translation outright says that a supernova is happening. Straight up. Now this is most likely going to give us Solar System level Cloud, and I imagine Death Battle will buy this, but not Galaxy level. See, Galaxy level Sephiroth comes from other statements that not only is Supernova a supernova, but somehow it also completely shatters the spatial dimension in which Sephiroth sends you to, which in-game visibly contains the entire Milky Way galaxy. And Cloud is still able to survive the explosion. I doubt they're going to give us Galaxy level Cloud. It's a lot more straightforward to go with Solar System level Cloud, and I'm extremely certain they won't be sticking with building level Sephiroth scaling. I mean, even Cloud in this first episode was put at planet busting levels of power with Sephiroth scaling. Even without Supernova, Cloud still scales above the likes of Bahamut Fury with a large planet level feat, and Typhon with a small star level feat. As for speed, they'll likely use Supernova as well, which can get results anywhere between trillions to quadrillions of times the speed of light, because it's travelling very far in a very short amount of time. Sephiroth uses telekinesis to summon the meteor, and that is most likely the same telekinesis he flies with, which is the justification I use to scale, but there's other justifications I've seen as well. There's tons of them. Even Bahamut Fury's own flight gets to thousands of times the speed of light. So I'm fairly certain we're going to get Solar System level and massively faster than light Cloud between the thousands and quadrillions, which is a very big range, I'm aware. As for Link, I am much less sure where they're going to put him, which is funny because unlike Sephiroth, Ganondorf was actually given a fairly workable set of stats last time. Relativistic in speed, which I'm imagining they could stick with for Link. He's definitely being composited, by the way. Let's not act like Link's going to be like a specific version. Ganondorf's got a feat in Wind Waker that's around half the speed of light, with dodging light arrows if you count them as light. Link also had a relativistic speed calc in Ganondorf vs Dracula, and with calc stacking, I think Breath of the Wild Link's Flurry Rush has been able to reach around 400 times the speed of light. In terms of attack potency, meanwhile, well, Link is in a weird spot. There's tons of different stats all over the place for him, but I don't know if I can see Death Battle buying, say, Universal Link. Universal Link comes from a ton of places, but none of them are ones that most people are generally able to accept, and I don't think Death Battle will either. There's stuff like Majora, who I doubt they'll have at uni. There's the Windfish dreaming up an entire universe, but anyone can dream a universe in their head. There's characters and the Triforce maintaining universes and all that, but I don't think Death Battle would use that either. And part of that is also because they pegged the Triforce back in Season 6, at least what Ganondorf had, at only Planetary. Even so, Cloud being so much faster means I could buy Death Battle thinking that he just hacks his Link to death, and if their opinion is that he just blitzes and hacks his, I'd imagine they just give the AP advantage to him as well for the sake of argument, because it's a lot harder to argue blitz and hacks than it is blitz, hacks, and AP stomp. I fully expect solar system and trillions of times the speed of light Cloud versus planet and maybe 400 times the speed of light Link. They could surprise me with Link scaling I don't expect or I'm not aware of, but with Death Battle standards I don't believe they would have Link at those super high levels, while Cloud is very difficult to argue at below without just straight up mental gymnastics in your way into not using Supernova. I think Cloud will win this, and no, I don't think that people want this matchup just for that, by the way. I know that there are some people who think that this matchup is only requested for the Cloud win, but this is not like Master Chief vs Doomslayer, where it is almost entirely, I want Doomslayer to kill Master Chief this time. And yeah, there are a bunch of people who don't think that way, but I see so many more people, even people who would claim that that's not the reason they want it, that they'll still say that they want to go on and on about how Slayer should win, Doomslayer got robbed and they want them to correct the mistake, and far less talking about wanting the episode remade because they think it can be good. But Link vs Cloud is one where, for the most part, I mostly do just see people wanting it regardless of who wins, and I really hope the episode is good. Let's briefly talk about the episode and what I'm hoping from it. For one thing, one of my biggest hopes from the start is that they give Cloud the fusion sword from Advent Children. You can have the Buster Sword, sure, but I would rather he uses the fusion sword at some point, like the Buster Sword gets damaged and he has to replace it. Because the fusion sword opens up so many more options for choreography, and it is his final sword in the lore. I don't know of any point in the timeline that takes place after Advent Children that shows Cloud using anything but the fusion sword, or even, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that takes place after Advent Children at all. But I feel like the fusion sword is the final sword for Cloud. It's a sword he used to put Sephiroth down, and in my opinion it's his best sword. Now, Advent Children, while I do like it, is not a good movie. It's not even close to being a decent movie, but the fusion sword is legitimately cool and I would love to see it, especially because Cloud has a relatively sterile arsenal otherwise. He has his limit breaks, which with any luck they'll have in succession like they did with Tifa, but then again they could just have him use them strategically, which I'd also be okay with, and he has his materia, which is a lot of stuff, but what he'll actually use I'm not sure of. I mean, they could use the time stop, that'd be cool, or the silencing one, there'd be a lot of cool ways they could use materia. But in terms of just mano-a-mano fighting, I think the fusion sword and having him actively switch between its forms and sizes throughout the fight would be really cool. Especially because the fusion sword allows him to utilize complete Omni / version 5, which would be the best end. I would also like to see Link use as much of his arsenal as the original. In the original he was throwing out his boomerang, his bow, hook shot, Pegasus boots, bombs, he used Z targeting and elemental arrows and shit. Mario vs Sonic's remake drastically lessened the amount of power-ups used, to the point of Mario only using 4 the entire fight, and Sonic using just 1 power-up aside from Hypersonic, and I really don't want that to happen to Link as well. I don't want him to just be reduced to Master Sword, Shield, and a couple other weapons at best. Speaking of which, I also hope he doesn't just stick to the weapons used in the original and the weapons used in Smash. You could have him use a different version of his boomerang, you could have him use the big ball and chain. I mean, that'd be cool to see. Imagine you weaponize the big ball of change of the build-up, but Cloud just smashes through it. You could have him use the ancient arrows. And there's so many different weapons that Link has that you could use that aren't in Smash or in the original Death Battle, and it'd be cool to see some of them. Hell, you could even maybe have Link use one of his masks. You can have him use Fierce Deity and have a really hype-ass fight between Fierce Deity, Link, and Cloud. And I guess it'd be a bit much to ask, but you could have a cool moment if you had the fight take place in like an area that would collapse over a large ditch, like a bridge or a building hanging over a cliff. And we could see the two try to climb their way back up the falling rubble to avoid crashing into the ground, and in that moment, you could show off the difference in approach the two characters have. You could have Cloud brute force his way back up with jumping and pure strength, and Link using his arsenal and hookshot to travel his way up tactically. But when it comes to a battle on the move, I mean, come on. Link has the Master Cycle and Cloud has the Fenrir. You could easily have a hyper shit motorcycle fight, which would be cool as hell to see, especially because fighting on a motorcycle is a thing Cloud does all the time. I think in 7 Remake and Advent Children he fights on a motorcycle at different points. Seeing as the Hylian shield is explicitly breakable in Breath of the Wild as well, you could have a really cool moment where, if Cloud wins, you could have him do the Omni / version 5 and Link tries to block it like he did in the original episode, but this time his shield cracks with each hit until eventually it completely shatters, and Cloud is able to go for the final blow and slam Link to the ground, hopefully without Link doing the Cloud faceplant. And I think that's all I have for things I want. I mean, there are smaller things that could be cool, like Link using the Golden Gauntlets to throw a building like the big stone slab he did that time, and Cloud brute forces it in half like he does to several skyscrapers throughout his appearances. Or Link could try to use his magic only for Cloud to silence him and blast back with a fully leveled up materia, or you could have Link try to use his Triforce Slash from Smash against some of Cloud's Limit Break. Okay, I'm going to stop. I could go on for hours and overhype myself, at which point I'm going to believe in the death battle disappointed, because all the hype that I built up is not going to be paid off in, what, like a 3-minute long animation probably. That doesn't sound like a great idea. I would rather just go in, limited expectations, get blown away by something amazing. I think Cloud will win, and I hope our first Blender fight will be good. Our first SFM fight, I personally wasn't too into at the time, but it was a very good introduction to our first of a new style of animation. Though when you think of, I mean, it's the best of the first showing of an animation, because like the first 2D was not very good. Smokey vs. McGruff is not a great episode, and the first live action was Nothing Was Dead. Hopefully Blender follows not that trend. But yes, Cloud will win. Hope our first Blender fight will be good, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'm going to now do something else. Have a good one, lads.